On a rain-soaked evening in downtown Chicago, Mark Henderson pulls his threadbare jacket tighter, counting the coins in his pocket. Just enough for his daughter Amy's school lunch tomorrow. That's when he notices her, an elegant woman sitting alone at the bus stop, drenched and shivering, clutching a worn paperback. While others hurry past, averting their eyes, Mark sees something familiar in her gaze. The same quiet desperation he's known since losing his wife. Without hesitation, he offers her his jacket and shares the last of Amy's homemade spaghetti. She accepts with a grateful smile and vanishes into the misty night. What Mark doesn't realize is that this simple act of kindness will transform his life forever. Could this mysterious woman be more than just another soul lost in the city's endless maze? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning alarm chirps at 4:30 a.m. and Mark Henderson's calloused hand reaches for it before the sound can wake Amy. In the dim light of their cramped one-bedroom apartment, he moves with practiced silence, the floorboards familiar enough to avoid every creak. Amy sleeps peacefully on the fold-out couch. They'd agreed she should have the bedroom, though she often sneaks out to be closer to him. In the kitchen, Mark opens the dented metal lunchbox, a garage sale find that Amy had proudly polished herself. Inside, he arranges tomorrow's lunch with mathematical precision. Half a sandwich, the bread ends because Amy doesn't mind them, an apple, slightly bruised but still good, and the last packet of fruit snacks from the dollar store's bulk bag. He'll skip lunch again today. Nothing new there. The bathroom mirror reveals the toll of recent years, grey threading through his temples, crow's feet deepening around eyes that still manage to hold warmth. At 38, he feels twice that. Age some mornings. Sarah would have known how to smooth those worry lines away with a gentle touch and a softer laugh. 5 years since the cancer took her, but some mornings the loss feels fresh as yesterday. "Daddy," Amy's voice, soft and sleep-wrapped, drifts from the living room. "Is it morning already?" "Just early morning, sweetheart," he whispers, moving. To kneel beside the couch. "Go back to sleep. You've got 2 more hours." But Amy's already sitting up, her dark hair a wild tangle around her face, Sarah's face in miniature. "I want to help make breakfast." It's their morning ritual, one he'd never deny her even if it means less sleep. Amy climbs onto the kitchen stool, supervising as he makes oatmeal. The cheap kind, but she never complains. They add a sprinkle of cinnamon, her idea months ago, when they couldn't afford brown sugar anymore, and pretend it's fancy restaurant fare. "Tell me about Mom," she says, like she does most mornings. What would she be doing right now? Mark stirs the oatmeal, buying time as he always does with this question. "She'd be braiding your hair," he says finally, "making those fancy twists I can never get right. And she'd be humming that song, you know the one, Moon River," Amy supplies, smiling. "Her favorite." "That's right, and she'd be so proud of you, sweetheart, so proud of how brave and kind you are. The maintenance job at Preston Towers starts at 7. It's not much, barely enough to keep them afloat. But Mr. Garcia in HR had taken a chance on him after the factory closed, and Mark's gratitude shows in every task he completes. He knows every inch of the building's aging systems, coaxing the temperamental boiler through winter and nursing the ancient AC units through summer. During his lunch break, which isn't really a break, just a different kind of work, he takes on odd jobs for the tenants. Mrs. O'Malley on 12 needs her faucet fixed. Mr. Chen on 8 wants help installing a ceiling fan. They pay what they can, usually in cash, sometimes in home-cooked meals he can take home to Amy. The thought of last night's encounter at the bus stop surfaces throughout the day. The woman's face, elegant despite the rain, and the way she'd hesitated before accepting his help, as if kindness had become foreign to her. He thinks about the book she'd been holding, worn paperback edges visible beneath her protective curl. It reminds him of Sarah, who'd always carried a book, who'd believed stories could save souls. The evening brings another shift, this time at Carson's Diner, where he helps close 3 nights a week. Jenny, the owner's daughter, always slips him. The day's leftover soup, it's against policy, but she has kids of her own and understands. Tonight it's tomato basil, Amy's favorite. Small mercies. By the time he makes it home, Amy's finished her homework under Mrs. Rodriguez's watchful eye. Their elderly neighbor refuses payment for watching her, saying simply, "We take care of our own." Amy's already in her pajamas, eager to show him her math test, a perfect score. "Look, Daddy, Ms. Williams said I could skip ahead if I keep this up." Pride and pain twist in his chest. Amy's brilliant, Sarah's genes showing through. But advanced classes mean fees they can't afford, supplies they'll have to somehow find. Still, he lifts her in a celebratory hug, her delighted giggle worth every aching muscle. "That's amazing, sweetheart. How about we celebrate with some special soup?" Later, after stories and prayers and one last glass of water, Mark sits in the darkness of their living room. Bills spread across the coffee table like fallen leaves, each one demanding more than he has to give. The jacket he'd given away was his best one. Foolish, perhaps, but he couldn't have done differently. Sarah had always said character shows in the choices we make when no one's looking to praise us. Tomorrow will be another early morning, another day of stretching pennies and minutes and energy. But for now, listening to Amy's soft breathing from the bedroom, Mark allows himself a moment of peace. They have each other, a roof overhead and food on the table, most days anyway. It's not the life he'd planned, not the future Sarah and he had dreamed of, but there's dignity in survival, in loving well despite it all. He thinks again of the woman at the bus stop, hopes she found her way home, wherever that might be. In the end, we're all just trying to find our way through the rain. Elizabeth Montgomery stares at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse office, watching rain-streak patterns across the Chicago skyline. Somewhere in her desk drawer, her corporate ID badge gleams with authority. Elizabeth Montgomery, CEO, Horizon Technologies. Right now, it feels more like a shackle than a symbol of success. The morning paper sits unopened on her desk, but she knows what's inside. Another profile piece praising the tech queen of the Midwest. Another analysis of how she turned her brother Michael's startup into a billion-dollar empire. They'll mention her innovative leadership, her ruthless business acumen, her perfect composure. None of them will mention how empty the boardroom feels without Michael's laugh, how the sight of his empty parking space still makes her chest tight 3 months after the accident. "Ms. Montgomery?" Her assistant's voice crackles through the intercom. "The board is waiting in conference room A." "Thank you, David." Her voice remains steady, practiced. She straightens her silk blouse, armor for another battle with men who see her grief as weakness, her recent distracted behavior as proof that a woman can't handle the pressure. The conference room falls silent as she enters. 12 faces, all wearing carefully neutral expressions. Elizabeth knows what they're thinking. She's heard the whispers. Ever since Michael's car spun out on that rainy highway, they've been watching, waiting for her to crack. "Gentlemen," she begins, but Chairman Wallace cuts in. "Elizabeth, we're concerned." His tone suggests he's anything but. "Your recent absences have not gone unnoticed. The market is volatile and Horizon needs steady leadership." She thinks of last night, of sitting at that bus stop in the rain, wearing clothes from a department store clearance rack. No makeup, no designer labels, no security detail, just Elizabeth trying to remember who she was before spreadsheets and stock options consumed her life. She thinks of the man who offered his jacket, who shared his food without question or judgment. In his eyes, she hadn't seen calculation or agenda, just simple human kindness. "I assure you, John, I'm perfectly capable of managing both my personal life and my responsibilities to this company." The words taste stale, rehearsed. The meeting drones on. Quarterly projections, market penetration strategies, consumer confidence indices. Elizabeth's pen moves across her notepad, but her mind keeps drifting to that worn paperback, Jane Eyre, Michael's favorite. He'd read it to her when they were children, two lonely kids in a house too big and too empty after their parents' death. Additionally, Wallace continues, the board feels it's time to discuss succession planning. The pen stops moving. The room temperature seems to drop 10 degrees. Succession planning. She repeats the words slowly, letting them hang in the air. 3 months after my brother's death, you want to discuss replacing me. We're thinking of the company's future, Elizabeth. Your recent behavior, taking public transportation, being seen in questionable areas of the city, it raises concerns about stability. She thinks of Michael's last words to her, spoken over lunch the day before the accident. Lizzie, when did we stop living and start existing? He'd been worried about her, about the walls she'd built around herself, the way she'd transformed their shared dream into a fortress of solitude. The company's future is secure, she says, standing, and my personal time is my own. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with our R&D team. In her office, Elizabeth sinks into her chair, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. On tune. Her desk, a photo, catches her eye. She and Michael at the company's launch party 10 years ago. His arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing. When did she last laugh like that? The rain has stopped, leaving the city washed clean. From 40 stories up, Chicago looks like a model train set, tiny people moving in prescribed patterns. Last night, at street level, she'd felt more alive than she had in months. The discomfort of wet clothes, the smell of bus exhaust, the raw humanity of strangers hurrying past. It had all felt real in a way her cushioned existence no longer did. She opens her laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. A few keystrokes, and she's looking at the maintenance logs for Preston Towers, one of Horizon's smaller properties. The man who helped her, she'd seen his uniform, noticed the building's logo. Mark Henderson, the file tells her. Single father, excellent performance. Reviews, multiple commendations from residents. Elizabeth closes the file, but not before memorizing the work order system's interface. Tomorrow, perhaps, a maintenance request will be filed for her temporary apartment, the modest 2-bedroom she'd rented, under her mother's maiden name, her secret refuge on nights when the penthouse feels too much like a museum of her former life. David, she calls through the intercom, please clear my evening schedule for the rest of the week. But Ms. Montgomery, the charity gala, send a donation, double the usual amount. She pauses, thinking of the jacket draped over her apartment's kitchen chair, still faintly smelling of honest work and unexpected kindness. And David, please look into our employee assistance programs, particularly regarding educational support for single parents. The afternoon sun breaks through the clouds, casting long shadows across her office. Elizabeth reaches for her brother's copy of Jane Eyre, its pages soft with age and memory. You were right, Michael, she whispers. It's time to start living again. The maintenance request comes through at 8:47 a.m. Unit 512, thermostat malfunction. Mark checks the details twice. It's not his usual building, but with Jerry out sick, he's covering extra territory this week. The address sits in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where rent costs more than his monthly income. The elevator in this building works smoothly, unlike Preston Towers' temperamental lift. Everything here speaks of money. Marble floors, brass fixtures, tasteful art on the walls. Mark feels out of place, his worn uniform a stark contrast to the building's polish. Still, there's comfort in the weight of his tool belt, in knowing his hands can fix what's broken. He knocks on 512, adjusting his collar. These higher-end tenants sometimes look at him like he's invisible, or worse, an intrusion in their carefully curated worlds. Come in, calls a voice from inside, familiar somehow, though he can't place it. The apartment surprises him. Despite the building's luxury, this unit feels lived in. Books scattered on coffee tables, a half-empty tea mug on the counter, a throw blanket casually draped across the couch. And there, hanging on a coat rack by the door, is his jacket. Hello, Mark. She stands in the doorway to the kitchen and recognition hits him like a physical force. The woman from the bus stop, but transformed. Gone are the rain-soaked clothes and vulnerable expression. She wears a simple blouse and slacks, but something in her posture speaks of authority. You're... He stumbles over words, mind racing to reconcile the shivering stranger with this composed figure. Elizabeth Montgomery, she offers, a small smile playing at her lips. Though when we met, I was just a woman in need of kindness. The name registers, like a shock. Everyone in Chicago knows Horizon Technologies, knows the Montgomery siblings who built it from nothing. He's seen her in the papers, on business news channels, the brilliant CEO who doubled the company's value in 5 years. Ms. Montgomery, I'm sorry, I didn't... Please, she interrupts gently, it's Elizabeth, and don't apologize. Your kindness. That night meant more precisely because you didn't know who I was. Mark's mind spins. He thinks of the spaghetti he shared, leftover food offered to a billionaire. He should feel embarrassed, but something in her expression stops him. The thermostat? He manages finally, clinging to the familiar territory of his job. Actually works perfectly. She moves to the kitchen counter, pulls out a chair. Would you sit with me for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss. Professional instinct tells him to decline. There are other maintenance calls waiting. And this isn't proper procedure, but curiosity wins out. He sits, keeping his tool belt on, as if to remind them both of who he is, why he's here. I looked into your file after that night, she begins. Then, seeing his expression, adds quickly, nothing invasive. Just your work history with Preston Towers, the resident comments about your help, the extra hours you put in. I just do my job, Ms. Elizabeth. You do far more than that. She pushes a folder across the counter. You're good with people. You understand systems, not just mechanical ones, but how things work together, how to fix what's broken. He opens the folder. Employment contract, facility manager position. The salary number makes him blink. Horizon's main campus needs someone who sees both the big picture and the small details, she continues. Someone who treats everyone, from CEO to cleaning staff, with the same respect. Someone like you. Mark stares at the contract. Throat tight. This kind of opportunity, it could change everything. Amy could have her own room, could join those advanced classes, could... Why? The question comes out before he can stop it. Because I gave you a jacket. Elizabeth's expression softens. Because you gave me your jacket when you clearly couldn't. Spare it. Because you shared food I now know was meant for your daughter's dinner. Because in a city where thousands walked past, you stopped to help. She pauses. The jacket and food were kindness. Your work history shows competence. I'm offering this job because you have both. A memory surfaces. Sarah, in those final hospital days, making him promise to keep hoping, to stay open to life's unexpected turns. Sometimes angels wear raincoats, she'd said, delirious with pain medication but smiling. You just have to trust the journey. I'd need to think about it. He says finally, talk to my daughter, of course. Elizabeth stands, professional mask slipping back into place. Take the weekend. The position starts next month if you want it. At the door, she hands him his jacket. I had it cleaned, she says, then hesitates. The night we met, I'd just lost my brother. First time I'd been alone since the funeral. Your kindness. It reminded me that the world isn't always cold. Mark takes the jacket, feels its familiar weight. I'm sorry about your brother, he says simply. Grief it's a long road. Something passes between them then. Understanding. Recognition. Two people who know the shape of loss, the weight of carrying on. Thank you, she says softly. And he knows she means for more than just the jacket. Walking back to Preston Towers, Mark fingers the employment contract in his pocket. The city feels different somehow, as if possibility has painted everything. In brighter colors. He thinks of Amy, of the life they could build, of Sarah's last words about trusting the journey. Sometimes angels wear raincoats, he thinks, and sometimes they sit at bus stops, waiting to change your life. That evening, Mark spreads the job offer letter across their small kitchen table, its crisp corporate letterhead stark against the worn wood. Amy sits beside him, homework temporarily forgotten, her eyes wide as he explains the opportunity. It's at a big technology company, sweetheart. I'd be in charge of making sure everything in their main building runs properly, kind of like what I do now, but for a much bigger place. The one with the super tall building? The one we can see from the park? Amy leans forward, tracing the Horizon Technologies logo with her finger. That's right. And he pauses, gathering courage. If I take it, we could move to a better apartment. You could have your own room, and could I take the advanced math class Ms. Williams talked about? Amy interrupts, hope lighting up her face. Mark's heart clenches. Of course that would be her first thought, not toys or new clothes, but education. Sarah would be so proud of her. Yes, sweetheart. You could take all the advanced classes you want. Amy's quiet for a moment, her expression serious beyond her years. But we'd have to leave Preston Towers. What about Mrs. Rodriguez and Jenny from the diner and Mr. Garcia? We'd still visit them, Mark assures her, touched by her concern for their makeshift family of supporters. But yes, things would change. Is it because of the lady, the one you gave your jacket to? Mark shouldn't be surprised that she remembers. Amy notices everything. Yes, she turns out to be someone very important, and she offered me this job. Was she nice when you saw her again? He thinks of Elizabeth Montgomery's gentle insistence on using her first name, the way she'd acknowledged his kindness without, making him feel small. Yes, she was nice. Different from that night, but still nice. Amy picks up the letter again, her face scrunched in concentration. Daddy, remember when Mommy used to say that good things come to good people, but sometimes they come in surprise packages? The memory hits him hard. Sarah wrapping Christmas presents in newspaper because they couldn't afford proper wrapping paper, telling Amy that the best gifts often come in unexpected ways. I remember, sweetheart. Maybe this is like that. A surprise package. She looks up at him, Sarah's wisdom shining through her eyes. I think you should take it, Daddy. Mommy would want you to. Mark pulls her into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, the cheap kind that never quite smells right. But she never complains. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, she giggles. Ms. Williams says. So, later, after Amy's asleep, Mark sits with the letter again. The salary would change their lives. No more skipping meals, no more choosing between fixing his shoes and buying Amy new notebooks. But it's not just about the money. He thinks of Elizabeth Montgomery's words. Someone who sees both the big picture and the small details. In that moment, she'd seen him, not just the maintenance man, but the person who notices things, who cares about doing things right. Pulling out his phone, he types a simple message to the number provided in the letter. I'd like to accept the position. Thank you for the opportunity. The response comes quickly. Excellent. Welcome to Horizon Technologies, Mark. I look forward to working with you. Merci. He falls asleep that night to the sound of rain against the windows. But for the first time in years, it doesn't sound like worry. It sounds like possibility. The keys to their new apartment feel heavy in Mark's hand. Solid brass, not the lightweight aluminum he's used to. Standing in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through windows twice the size of their old ones, he watches Amy spin in circles, her footsteps echoing on hardwood floors. Daddy, come see my room! She grabs his hand, pulling him down the hallway. Look how big it is, and I have my own window seat. The room is indeed spacious, with built-in bookshelves and a cushioned window alcove overlooking a small park. Amy has already claimed the spot, her worn copy of A Wrinkle in Time placed ceremoniously on the cushion. Can we paint it blue? Like the sky? She asks, bouncing on her toes. Mrs. Rodriguez helped me pick out the perfect shade before we left. The mention of their old neighbor brings a bittersweet smile to Mark's face. Their goodbye had been emotional, Mrs. Rodriguez pressing containers of homemade empanadas into their hands, making them promise to visit. You may be moving up in the world, she'd said, hugging Amy tight, but you'll always be family. Yes, sweetheart, we can paint it blue. He can say yes to things now. It still feels strange. The movers arrive with their few belongings. Everything fits in one small truck. Their furniture looks shabby against the pristine walls, but Mark has already started setting aside money for replacements. Careful budgeting is a habit he won't break, even with the generous salary. "Mr. Henderson?" a voice calls from the doorway. The building manager, Thomas, stands there with a welcome basket. "Just wanted to make sure you're settling in okay. The previous tenant left these spare keys in the kitchen drawer. They're for the bike storage and the rooftop garden." Rooftop garden. The words sound like luxury, like a life that belongs to someone else. But the keys are real in his hand, joining the others on his new keyring. As Thomas leaves, Mark notices Amy has gone quiet, sitting cross-legged in front of the box marked "Special Things." She's holding the silver frame that usually sits by her bed, the last family photo taken before Sarah got sick. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nods slowly. "I just wish Mommy could see our new home. She would love the window seat." Mark sits beside her, drawing her close. She can see it. "Remember what she always said about stars, that they're windows in heaven," Amy whispers, "and she's watching us through them." "That's right, and tonight we'll be able to see more stars from our window seat than we ever could at the old apartment." They spend that first evening making the space their own. Amy arranges her books by color on the new shelves. "It's called a rainbow gradient, Daddy. Ms. Williams taught us about it." Mark hangs Sarah's wind chimes in the kitchen window, their gentle tinkling, making the strange space feel more like home. The dinner table is set with their mismatched plates, but the view through the windows makes even their simple meal of pasta feel special. They can see the Horizon Technologies building from here, its upper floors gleaming in the sunset. "That's where you'll work," Amy says, pointing with her fork. "Will you be able to see our apartment from there?" "Maybe. I'll have to learn my way. Around first." His new position starts tomorrow, and despite his experience, nervousness flutters in his stomach. After dinner, they discover the building has a small library in the lobby, a shelf-lined room with comfortable chairs, and a children's corner. Amy's eyes light up at the sign announcing, "Residents welcome to borrow books." "Daddy, look, they have the next book in the series I'm reading." "You can check it out tomorrow after school," he promises. Her new school, another change, but one they're both excited about. The principal had reviewed Amy's test scores and immediately recommended her for the advanced program. Back in their apartment, as Mark tucks Amy into her new bed in her new room, she holds out her pinky. "Promise we'll still have oatmeal for breakfast sometimes, even though we can afford the fancy cereals now." He links his pinky with hers, throat tight with love for this remarkable child who remembers to honor the simple things that got them through hard times. "Promise." With cinnamon, just like always. Later, standing at his bedroom window, Mark looks out at the city lights. The view is different here, but the stars above are the same ones that watched over their old apartment. Somewhere out there, Sarah is watching too, probably smiling at how far they've come. He thinks of tomorrow, of walking into that gleaming tower not as a maintenance man, but as a department head. The thought is daunting, but he remembers Elizabeth Montgomery's words about seeing both the big picture and the small details. That he can do. That's who he is. The keys sit on his nightstand, catching the moonlight. New keys, new doors, new possibilities, but the same heart that knows how to appreciate it all. The old family photo album sits open on Mark's lap, its pages worn soft at the corners from years of careful turning. He hadn't planned to share these memories today, but somehow it feels right. Elizabeth sits beside him on the office break room and couch, her usual corporate polish softened by genuine interest as he points to a faded photograph. "This was Sarah's favorite spot in the park," he explains, touching the image of his late wife sitting on a weathered bench, pregnant Amy visible, only as a subtle curve. She'd read there for hours, said the maple trees reminded her of growing up in Vermont. It's been 2 months since he started at Horizon, and these lunch breaks with Elizabeth have become an unexpected ritual. She'd stopped by his office that First week, ostensibly to check on his transition, and somehow they'd ended up talking for an hour about everything except work. "She has your smile," Elizabeth says, studying another photo of Sarah, or rather Amy has both of yours. The observation catches him off guard. Most people don't notice these details, these precious links between past and present. But Elizabeth notices everything, just as she'd noticed him that rainy night at the bus stop. "Sarah would have liked you," he finds himself saying. "She always said you could judge people by how they treat others when they think no one's watching." Elizabeth's fingers brush against a loose photo that slipped from the album. Amy's 5th birthday, the last one before Sarah got sick. "I wish I could have known her," she says softly. Then, after a pause, "Would you and Amy like to have dinner with me tomorrow? Nothing fancy, just dinner." The invitation hangs in the air, weighted with possibility. They've kept their friendship mostly confined to the office, professional lines carefully drawn. But there's something in Elizabeth's voice that speaks to the loneliness Mark recognizes from his own mirror. "I'll have to check with my social secretary," he jokes, and is rewarded with Elizabeth's laugh. A real one, not the polished chuckle she uses in board meetings. "Amy's been curious about you, actually. She calls you the kind lady from the rain." Children have a way of cutting through pretense, don't they? Elizabeth reaches into her bag, pulling out a worn leather wallet. From it, she extracts a creased photograph. "This is Michael, my brother, about a year before the accident. The man in the photo has Elizabeth's eyes and an infectious grin. He's wearing a Star Wars t-shirt under a blazer, looking completely out of place in what appears to be a formal business setting. He never quite fit the corporate mold," Elizabeth says fondly. "Used to drive our board crazy, showing up to meetings in superhero socks. But he knew how to make everyone feel valued, from the cleaning staff to the CEO." She tucks the photo away carefully. "I miss that most. His ability to see the person behind the position. Amy does that too," Mark offers. "Last week she made thank you cards for the entire maintenance team, complete with mathematical equations about how many light bulbs they change in a year." Elizabeth's smile reaches her eyes. "She's extraordinary, your daughter. I heard from Dr. Phillips that she's already advanced 2 grade levels in math." She gets her brains from her mother. Mark closes the photo album gently. "Sarah was working on her PhD in literature when we met. She could quote Shakespeare and solve differential equations in the same breath. And what did she see in a maintenance man?" Elizabeth asks, then immediately looks stricken. "I'm sorry, that was honest," Mark finishes for her. "Sarah said, she fell in love with my hands." He holds them up, still bearing the calluses of honest work despite his new position. "Said they were hands that knew how to fix things, how to hold on, how to let go when necessary." Something shifts in Elizabeth's expression. "Those are rare qualities," she says quietly, "knowing how to do all 3. The afternoon sun slants through the break room windows, casting long shadows. In a few minutes, they'll both return to their respective roles, the CEO and the facility manager. But for now, they're just 2 people sharing the weight of memory, the warmth of new friendship. About dinner tomorrow," Mark says, standing. "Amy's favorite is Italian. But fair warning, she'll probably bring her math homework and try to explain quantum physics to you. She's convinced she's discovered a new theorem." Elizabeth rises too, smoothing her skirt in a gesture he's come to recognize as her transition back to CEO mode. But her smile remains personal, warm. "I look forward to it. Both the Italian and the quantum physics." As they part ways at the break room door, Mark realizes the photo album feels lighter in his hands. Some memories are easier to carry when shared with someone who understands their weight. The anonymous complaint letter appears in Mark's inbox on a Tuesday morning, copied to HR and the board of directors. The language is carefully corporate, dripping with false concern. Questions have been raised about the unusual circumstances of Mr. Henderson's hiring and rapid promotion, particularly given his limited educational background and personal connection to senior management. Mark reads it twice, his coffee growing cold beside his keyboard. Through his office window, he can see the maintenance team he supervises efficiently going about their morning routines. The same routines he'd done himself just months ago. He knows every procedure, every system, every challenge they face. Because he's lived it. You've seen the letter, I assume? Elizabeth appears in his doorway, her expression carefully neutral. They haven't had lunch together for 2 weeks, both aware of the whispers starting to circulate through the office. Just reading it now, he manages a small smile. Apparently my limited educational background is cause for concern. Mark, it's okay, he interrupts gently. They're not entirely wrong. I don't have an MBA. I can't quote business theories or navigate corporate politics, but I do know this building, these systems, these people. Elizabeth steps into the office, closing the door. The board wants me to reassign you. They're suggesting a lateral move to one of our smaller properties. The suggestion stings, but Mark thinks of Sarah, of how she faced her illness with quiet dignity. Some battles are won not by fighting, but by proving your worth through actions. Give me 2 weeks, he says, an idea forming. The quarterly facility. Audit is coming up. Let me handle it personally. The audit usually takes a month, even with a full team. I'll do it in 2 weeks. Every system, every procedure, every efficiency measurement. He stands, warming to the challenge. And I'll present the findings to the board myself. Elizabeth studies him for a long moment. You know this won't just be about the technical aspects. They'll be looking for any excuse. I know, he picks up the complaint letter, folds it carefully. But I also know that actions speak louder than whispers. The next 2 weeks become a blur of activity. Mark arrives before dawn each day, working alongside his team, documenting everything. He knows this building's heartbeat, its temperamental elevators, its aging HVAC system, its subtle signs of needed maintenance that most people would miss. The maintenance staff rally around him, offering insights and support. They remember him from his Preston Towers days, remember how he'd always treated them with respect. Even Mrs. Martinez from the night cleaning crew stays late to show him which offices waste the most energy after hours. He creates detailed spreadsheets, something he'd learned from helping Amy with her math homework. Every system evaluation, every efficiency calculation, every proposed improvement is meticulously documented. During his lunch breaks, he studies corporate presentation techniques on YouTube, practicing his delivery while eating sandwiches at his desk. The night before the board presentation, Amy helps him review his notes. Remember what Mom used to say about test anxiety? She asks, straightening his tie with serious concentration. Knowledge isn't about having all the answers, Mark recites, smiling at the memory. It's about knowing where to find them, and you know this building better than anyone, Daddy. The boardroom is intimidating, all glass and chrome and power suits. Mark feels the weight of every eye on him as he sets up his presentation. In the front row, he spots the likely author of the complaint letter, a senior VP who's never quite hidden his disdain. But when Mark begins to speak, something shifts. He's not trying to be something he's not. He's simply sharing what he knows, what he's learned, what he sees could be better. He shows them not just problems, but solutions. Not just data, but stories of real people making the building work. Our night maintenance team identified a pattern of micro-cracks in the West Wing foundation, he explains, pulling up detailed photos. By addressing it now, we'll save approximately $2.3 million in potential repairs over the next 5 years. This kind of institutional knowledge, this attention to detail, it's our first line of defense against major system failures. The presentation runs for exactly 45 minutes. When he finishes, there's a moment of silence. Then Chairman Wallace, who's been quietly taking notes, looks up. Mr. Henderson, he says slowly, I must admit, this is one of the most comprehensive facility audits I've seen in my 30 years on this board. You've identified potential savings of nearly $5 million through preventive maintenance and system upgrades. In the front row, the VP shifts uncomfortably. Thank you, sir. Mark straightens his shoulders. When you understand a system from the ground up, you see both its strengths and its potential. Later that afternoon, a new memo circulates. The board has unanimously approved Mr. Henderson's proposed facility improvements with an expanded budget for preventive maintenance. His position as facility manager has been made permanent with an increased scope of responsibilities. Mark prints the memo, not for himself, but for Amy. She's been collecting everything about his new job, creating a scrapbook she calls Daddy's Big Adventure. Tonight, they'll add this page together, and maybe he'll finally tell her about the complaint letter, not as a story of opposition, but as proof that dignity and hard work still matter more than whispers and assumptions. On his desk, he places the anonymous complaint letter in a frame, a reminder that sometimes the best response to doubt is simply to prove yourself one careful step at a time. The handmade birthday card sits propped on Amy's dresser, its careful lettering and mathematical formulas spilling across the front in her distinctive script. To Elizabeth, who makes numbers dance like Mom did. Inside, she's drawn a complex, geometric pattern that somehow forms a heart when you hold it at the right angle. Do you think she'll like it? Amy asks, adjusting the card's position for the 10th time. I used the golden ratio for the pattern, like we learned in advanced math. Mark watches his daughter fuss with the decoration for her 9th birthday party, the first real celebration they've had since Sarah passed. Their new apartment's living room has been transformed with streamers and fairy lights, and the dining table holds a proper cake from a real bakery, not the usual homemade cupcakes from their old life. She'll love it, he assures Amy, thinking of how Elizabeth's face lights up whenever she talks about Amy's progress in her advanced classes. But you don't have to give her anything, sweetheart. She's just happy to be invited. She's family now, Amy states, with the simple certainty of childhood. Like Mrs. Rodriguez and Jenny from the diner. She pauses, touching the framed photo of Sarah on her bookshelf. Mom would want her to have a card. The doorbell rings, and Amy races to answer it. Elizabeth stands there looking almost nervous, so different from her corporate persona, holding a carefully wrapped package. Happy birthday, Amy, she says, then blinks in surprise as Amy throws her arms around her waist. You came early. Perfect. I need help with the quantum physics decorations. Mark and Elizabeth's eyes meet over Amy's head, sharing an amused look. Amy has been obsessed with quantum entanglement lately, insisting that her party decorations should reflect the fundamental interconnectedness of all things. I wouldn't miss it, Elizabeth says, following Amy to the craft table they've set up, though you might have to explain the physics to me again. The next hour passes in a blur of glitter and scientific theories. Elizabeth sits cross-legged on the floor, her designer slacks collecting sparkles, as Amy explains how they're creating a visual representation of quantum probability clouds. Mark watches them from the kitchen as he arranges snacks, his heart full and aching in equal measure. Mrs. Rodriguez arrives next, bringing her famous empanadas and hugging everyone, including Elizabeth, who looks startled but pleased by the warmth. Jenny from the diner comes with her kids, and Mr. Garcia from Preston Towers appears with his wife and a huge box wrapped in Sunday comics. Their old tradition. Quite a gathering, Elizabeth murmurs to Mark as they watch Amy showing her friends the telescope she received, Elizabeth's gift, already assembled and pointing toward the window seat. This is her family, Mark explains. The people who helped us through the hard times, who treated us like we mattered when we had nothing to offer but gratitude. Elizabeth's hand finds his, squeezing gently. You always had more to offer than you knew. Before Mark can respond, Amy calls everyone to the table. She's arranged the chairs carefully, leaving the seat to her right empty. Everyone understands, without being told. That's Sarah's place, always. Mom loved birthday science, Amy announces, standing to address her guests with endearing formality. She said that celebrating another trip around the sun was the most mathematical party there is, so I made everyone quantum party hats. The adults gamely don the decorated paper hats, each featuring what Amy explains are Schrödinger's cat equations. Elizabeth wears hers, with the same dignity she brings to board meetings, making Amy beam. And now, Amy continues, I have something special. She retrieves her card for Elizabeth, suddenly shy. Because you helped make this the best year since, Mom, and because you understand about parallel universes and missing people and how love is like gravity, a fundamental force that holds everything together. Elizabeth accepts the card with trembling hands, reading the complex mathematics and the simple message within. For a moment, her composed facade cracks, revealing the depth of emotion beneath. Amy, she whispers, this is the most beautiful card I've ever received. Later, after the cake has been eaten and the quantum physics demonstrations concluded, Mark finds Elizabeth standing by the window seat, still holding Amy's card. Thank you, she says, without turning, for letting me be part of this. Thank you for wanting to be, he replies simply. They stand in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that Sarah would have loved to describe. Through the telescope's lens, the first evening star becomes visible. One of Sarah's windows in heaven, now watching over a family that's somehow growing even in her absence. Amy joins them, slipping her small hand into Elizabeth's. Did you know, she begins in her teaching voice, that quantum theory suggests everything in the universe is connected, even people who seem far apart? Elizabeth looks down at their joined hands, then at Mark, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Yes, she says softly, I'm beginning to understand that very well. The emergency protocol manual lands on Mark's desk at 3:17 a.m., its pages illuminated by emergency lighting. The building's main power grid has failed, backup generators are struggling, and somewhere in the basement, freezing water is threatening. Millions of dollars worth of server equipment. Sir, the water level's rising in server room B. Rodriguez, his night shift supervisor, reports through the crackle of a battery-powered radio. Tech team says we have maybe 30 minutes before we lose critical systems. Mark flips through the manual with practiced efficiency, but his mind is already mapping the building's circulatory system. Pipes and power lines he knows as intimately as the lines on his palms. Get me eyes on the north junction box, he commands, already moving toward the stairwell. And someone find out why those generators aren't at full capacity. The emergency started simple enough. A power fluctuation, normal for a stormy Chicago night. But Mark had noticed something in the pattern of the outage. Something that reminded him of an issue he'd dealt with at Preston Towers years ago when a minor leak had cascaded into a major system failure. His phone buzzes. Elizabeth, Mark, the board's demanding updates. We've got vital research data at risk, international servers. I know where the problem is, he interrupts, his voice steady despite his rapid descent down the stairs. But I need 20 minutes and full authority to bypass standard protocols. There's a pause, filled only by the sound of his footsteps echoing in the stairwell. You have it, Elizabeth says finally, whatever you need. The basement level is organized chaos. Tech teams rush between servers, trying to save what they can. Security personnel direct emergency responders. But Mark heads straight for a seemingly innocuous maintenance panel, one not even listed in the emergency manual. Rodriguez, he calls into his radio. Remember that modification we documented last month? The one that didn't match the original blueprints? The auxiliary cooling line? Yeah, the one that shouldn't have been there. That's our problem. It's not supposed to exist, so the automated systems don't know to check it. Mark's fingers trace the wall, finding the subtle seam. Get me a crew with cutting tools, now. The next 17 minutes become a blur of precise actions. Mark directs his team with quiet authority, drawing on years of hands-on experience and institutional memory. Where others see chaos, he sees patterns, the building talking to him through pressure gauges and flow meters. "Sir," a young technician approaches, tablet in hand. "The manual says we need board approval to—" "The manual was written for a building that doesn't exist anymore," Mark explains, never pausing in his work. "Sometimes you have to trust what the building's telling you, not what the book says." Water begins to recede, emergency lights flicker, then steady. In the server rooms, critical systems stabilize. By the time dawn breaks over Chicago, the crisis has been averted. The post-emergency briefing takes place in the main conference room, now lit by proper lights. Mark stands before the board, his clothes still damp, explaining how an undocumented modification from the building's original construction had created a hidden vulnerability. If Mr. Henderson hadn't recognized the pattern, the head of IT explains, we would have lost roughly $50 million in equipment and data. His unorthodox approach saved not just our hardware, but years of research. Chairman Wallace leans forward. "How did you know where to look? The emergency protocols—" "With all due respect, sir," Mark interrupts gently, holding up the manual. "Protocols are written for anticipated problems, but buildings are like living things. They change, adapt, develop new patterns. Sometimes the most valuable protocol is knowing how to read those changes." Elizabeth sits quietly at the head of the table, but her slight smile speaks volumes. She'd trusted his instincts, given him the authority he needed without hesitation. Later, after the board members have left and cleanup crews are finishing their work, Mark finds a quiet moment in his office. The emergency manual sits on his desk, and he adds his own notes to it. Not just about what they did, but why. Future facility managers might need to understand not just the procedures, but the philosophy behind them. His phone buzzes with a text from Amy. "Heard about the emergency on the news. Did you fix it like you fixed our old building's boiler? Also, can you still make it to my science fair tonight?" Mark smiles, typing back, "All fixed, and wouldn't miss the science fair for anything. Your quantum mechanics project is way more impressive than a little flood." Another message arrives, this one from Elizabeth. "Dinner after the science fair? I think we all deserve to celebrate." Looking out his window at the rising sun, Mark thinks about how life works in circles. Once, he'd been the maintenance man that people barely noticed. Now he's the one they called in crisis, not despite his background, but because of it. Sarah would have appreciated the poetry in that. He adds one final note to the manual. Sometimes the best way to handle an emergency is to remember that every problem was once solved for the first time by someone who had to trust their experience over their fears. The crystal Christmas ornament catches the December sunlight, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the living room walls. Elizabeth holds it carefully, reading the hand-painted inscription, "First Christmas Together, 2025. Amy bounces excitedly. Beside her as they decorate the tree, a real pine this year, its fresh scent filling the apartment. "Daddy and I always had a tiny artificial tree before," Amy explains, reaching for another ornament, a faded paper star, clearly homemade. "But Mum's family had a tradition of real trees. She said they smell like memories." Elizabeth watches. Mark hangs Sarah's old ornaments with reverent care. Each one comes with a story that Amy knows by heart. The ceramic angel from Sarah's childhood, the silver bell from their first Christmas as a couple, the glitter-covered pine cone from Amy's. "First Christmas. This spot needs something special," Elizabeth says, indicating a bare branch at eye level. She reaches into her bag, pulling out a small box. "I found this in my brother Michael's things. He'd want it to be on a family tree." Inside lies a worn Millennium Falcon ornament, its paint slightly chipped. "Michael loved Star Wars," she explains, her voice soft with memory. "He used to say that hope was like the Force. It surrounds us, binds us, makes impossible things possible." Amy takes the ornament with solemn care, hanging it beside her mother's angel. Now they're watching over. Us together, she declares. Mom and Michael from their windows in heaven. Mark and Elizabeth's eyes meet over Amy's head, sharing a moment of understanding. Grief changes shape over time, becomes something you carry rather than something that carries you. I have hot chocolate, Mark offers, heading to the kitchen. Sarah's recipe, with a dash of cinnamon and tiny marshmallows. Elizabeth follows him, leaving Amy to continue her careful ornament arrangement. In the kitchen, she finds him standing at the counter, measuring cocoa powder with the same precision. He brings to his work. Thank you, she says quietly, for including me in this. I know these traditions are precious to you both. Mark looks up, his eyes warm. Sarah believed holidays were meant for sharing. She used to invite everyone who didn't have family nearby, grad school classmates, neighbors, anyone who needed. A place to belong, like you did for me, Elizabeth realizes. That night at the bus stop, maybe I was just following her example without knowing it. He pours the hot chocolate into mugs, 3 matching ones, a small detail that speaks volumes about how their lives have intertwined. Back in the living room, Amy has arranged her quantum physics textbooks under the tree. Present inspiration, she explains with a grin. Also, did you know that according to quantum theory, all possible Christmas timelines exist simultaneously? So somewhere there's a universe where... She trails off, sudden understanding flickering across her young face. In another timeline, her mother would be here. In another timeline, Michael would be teasing Elizabeth about her perfect tree trimming technique. Elizabeth sets down her hot chocolate and kneels beside Amy. You know what I think? I think those other timelines are beautiful. But this one, this exact one where we're all together, this is pretty special too. Because we chose it, Amy says thoughtfully. Like how particles choose their paths in quantum mechanics. Exactly. Elizabeth pulls a small package from her pocket, which is why I wanted to give you this early. It's not exactly a Christmas present. Amy unwraps it carefully to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a compass pendant. It's beautiful, but why not wait for Christmas? Because this is about another tradition. Michael and I lost our parents young, like you lost your mom. Every year on December 1st, our guardian would give us each a compass. She said that even when you feel lost, love can help you find your way home. Mark watches as Elizabeth fastens the necklace around Amy's neck, her hands gentle and sure. The gesture feels significant, not replacing Sarah, but honoring her memory while building something new. I have hot chocolate mustache, Amy announces, breaking the emotional moment. With childish wisdom, they all laugh, and somehow the laughter makes the memories easier to hold. Later, after Amy has gone to bed, Mark and Elizabeth sit in the glow of the Christmas lights. The Millennium Falcon ornament turns slowly beside the angel, their shadows merging on the wall. Sarah would be happy, Mark says finally, seeing Amy loved so well by so many people. Elizabeth's hand finds his in the soft light. Michael would be too, seeing his sister learning to live again, not just exist. Outside, snow begins to fall, adding its own quiet magic to the evening. The crystal ornament catches the light once. More, its inscription promising not just a first Christmas together, but the hope of many more to come. The tabloid newspaper lands on Mark's desk early Monday morning, its garish headlines screaming, Tech Queen's Secret Romance, Horizon CEO Elizabeth Montgomery, dating employee, inside source reveals all. Below, a grainy photo shows them at Amy's science fair, Elizabeth beaming, as Amy explains her quantum mechanics project, Mark's hand resting naturally on Elizabeth's shoulder. His phone buzzes almost immediately with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Don't read the comments, mijito. People who don't know your heart don't deserve your attention. But it's too late. He's already seen some of them online. Gold digger, social climber, taking advantage. The words sting not for himself, but for how they cheapen something genuine and precious. The truth is both simpler and more complex than the headlines suggest. They haven't even discussed dating, both careful with their growing feelings, mindful of Amy's heart and their own healing. What they have is a friendship built on understanding, trust, and shared experiences of loss and recovery. Mr. Henderson, his assistant's voice is carefully neutral. Ms. Montgomery would like to see you in her office. The journey to the top floor feels longer than usual. Every eye follows him. Every whispered conversation seems to pause as he passes. He thinks of Amy, who will face this scrutiny at school today, and his jaw tightens. Elizabeth stands at her window, another newspaper crushed in her hand. "I'm so sorry, Mark. This isn't fair to you or Amy." "Hey," he says softly, closing the door behind him. "We haven't done anything wrong." She turns, and he sees the worry in her eyes. The board is concerned about public perception and corporate image. They're calling an emergency meeting this afternoon. Are they worried I'll steal company secrets? The attempt at humor falls flat. Or that I'm not sophisticated enough for their social circle? They're worried I'm not thinking clearly. Elizabeth's voice carries an edge of steel now. That grief over Michael has made me vulnerable to exploitation. The word hangs between them, ugly and accusatory. Mark thinks of that rainy night. At the bus stop, how they'd connected as simply two souls, recognizing shared pain. No titles, no agendas. "What do you need from me?" he asks, because that's who he is. Someone who fixes things, who shoulders burdens, who faces problems head on. "I need you to trust me," Elizabeth says, straightening her shoulders. "And to remember that what matters isn't what they say about us, but what we know to be true." His phone buzzes again. Amy's school. His heart sinks, but when he checks the message, it's a photo from her science teacher. Amy stands at the front of her class, head high, giving a presentation about quantum entanglement. The caption reads, "Your daughter just told her class that sometimes the universe connects people in ways algorithms can't explain. She's quite remarkable." He shows Elizabeth the message, and her tense expression softens. She certainly is. The day unfolds in a blur of meetings and whispers. Mark focuses on his work, handling a minor plumbing crisis on the third floor with his usual competence. If he's more thorough than usual in his documentation, more precise in following protocols, who can blame him? The board meeting runs late into the evening. Elizabeth texts updates. Still here. They're concerned about stockholder reactions. Wallace suggesting I take a leave of absence. Finally, near midnight, his phone rings. "Come up to my office?" Elizabeth sounds tired but resolute. He finds her sitting on her office couch, heels kicked off, looking more like the woman from the bus stop than the CEO who just faced down her board. "They wanted me to issue a statement," she says without preamble, denying any impropriety, emphasizing our professional relationship, suggesting distance would be maintained. Mark's heart constricts, but he nods. "I understand. The company has to come first." That's what they said. That's what they expected me to say. Elizabeth stands, pacing to her window. "But I told them something Michael used to say. A company is just an idea. People, they're real." She turns to face him. "I told them that while I appreciate their concern, my personal life is my own. That you've proven your worth to this company a dozen times over. That if they want to question someone's judgment, they should look at their own prejudices about what makes a person valuable." "Elizabeth." He starts forward, but she holds up a hand. "I'm not done. I told them that if they push this issue, they'll have my resignation on their desk tomorrow morning. Because any company that would judge a man's worth by his background rather than his character doesn't deserve either of us." The silence that follows feels weighted with possibility. Through the window, Chicago glitters below them, a city of millions, where two people somehow found each other on a rainy night. "Amy asked me something interesting today," Mark says finally. She said, "Daddy, is it okay to be happy about something that makes other people uncomfortable?" What did you tell her? I told her what Sarah used to say, that joy doesn't need anyone's permission to be real. Elizabeth moves closer, her expression soft in the city lights. "Smart woman, you're Sarah?" "Yes," Mark agrees, thinking of another. Wise woman who once sat alone in the rain, waiting for someone to see her real self. I seem to be surrounded by them. The boarding pass sits on Elizabeth's desk like a verdict. Chicago O'Hare to Tokyo Narita, business class. 2 weeks of international meetings, damage control with nervous investors, endless presentations about Horizon's stability and future. She's made this trip a dozen times before, but now the thought of leaving feels different. You could come with me, she says to Mark, who's helping her organize presentation materials in her office. The education system in Japan is extraordinary. Amy would love it. They both know it's impossible. Amy has school, Mark has responsibilities. Here, and bringing them would only fuel more speculation. Still, the offer hangs in the air, heavy with unspoken feelings. We'll be fine, Mark assures her, though his eyes linger on her face as if memorizing details. Amy's already planning to track your flight path using some complicated mathematical formula. She says she can calculate exactly where you are using time zones and quantum probability. Elizabeth laughs, but it catches in her throat. When did these two people become so essential to her world? The thought of empty evenings without Amy's scientific theories or Mark's quiet understanding makes her chest ache. I'd left some presents for her, she admits. One for each day I'm gone. Mrs. Rodriguez promised to deliver them. You'll spoil her, Mark says softly, but his expression speaks volumes about what this gesture means to him. The last one is quantum. Physics flashcards. I thought maybe we could study together when I get back, prepare for her advanced placement test. Mark steps closer, straightening papers that don't need straightening. Elizabeth, he hesitates, then simply says, we'll miss you. The first few days of separation pass in a blur of meetings and jet lag. Elizabeth finds herself reaching for her phone between sessions, smiling at Amy's texts filled with scientific observations and missing apostrophes. Dad says it's 3 a.m. there, but quantum mechanics says time is relative, so maybe you're actually having lunch? Mrs. Rodriguez brought your present, a constellation map. Did you know Sagittarius looks nothing like an archer? Dad tried to help me with advanced trigonometry, but he says you explain it better. Come home soon? Mark's messages are fewer, but weighted with care. Amy used your probability calculations to predict where you'd be right now. She was off by only 20 minutes. You're creating a monster. The quantum physics flashcards arrived early. She's made. We practice with her every night. I now know more about Schrödinger's cat than any maintenance manager should. The stars are particularly bright tonight. Amy says it's because you're closer to them at cruising altitude. Late one night, fighting insomnia in her hotel room, Elizabeth finds herself typing, I keep thinking about that night at the bus stop. How something as simple as a jacket and shared food can change the course of lives. Mark's response comes quickly, despite the time difference. Sarah used to say that kindness is like a key. It opens doors we didn't even know were locked. In video calls, she watches Amy demonstrate scientific principles using hotel items Elizabeth describes to her. See, Daddy, if Elizabeth moves her coffee cup to the edge of the desk, it demonstrates gravitational potential energy. But it's the quiet moments that affect her most. When the camera catches Mark in the background, watching Amy with a mixture of pride and love that makes Elizabeth's heart twist with longing for this family that's somehow become hers. During a particularly tedious board meeting in Osaka, she finds herself sketching quantum entanglement patterns in her notebook, just as Amy had drawn them. The Japanese executives are discussing market penetration strategies, but Elizabeth's mind is in Chicago, wondering if Mark is wearing the jacket she'd had cleaned, if Amy is using the telescope to track satellites. Ms. Montgomery, her assistant's voice breaks through her reverie. They're ready for your presentation. She stands, straightening her suit, and presents Horizon's future plans with her usual precision and authority. But now there's something else in her voice when she speaks about company values, about the importance of seeing people for who they are rather than what they represent. In her hotel room that evening, she finds an email from Mark with a simple subject line, Amy's latest theory. Inside is a photo of a drawing covered in Amy's distinctive handwriting, Quantum Entanglement and Love, a Scientific Study. The text is a child's earnest attempt to prove, through mathematical equations and scientific principles, that love operates under quantum rules, that once two particles or people connect, distance becomes irrelevant. Elizabeth traces the equations with her finger, remembering Michael's last words to her about living rather than existing. She thinks about how loss carved spaces in her life that she thought would stay empty forever, only to find them gradually filling with new love, different, but no less precious. Taking out her phone, she types a message to Mark, coming home, early. Some things are more important than market strategies. His response makes her smile through sudden tears. Amy says quantum entanglement predicted this. I just call it missing you. The love letter sits unfolded on Mark's desk, written on the back of Amy's quantum physics homework, the only paper he could find at 3 a.m., when the words finally demanded to be written. His handwriting flows across the equations, a father's. Heart poured out in simple, honest terms. Elizabeth, there are moments that change us, like rain on a cold night, or a jacket freely given, or a child's unwavering belief that love follows the same rules as quantum physics. Amy might be right about that last part. How else to explain the way distance only made you feel closer? Sarah once told me that real love isn't about filling the empty spaces in our lives, but about creating new spaces we never knew could exist. She was right, as she so often was. You haven't replaced anyone. You've carved your own place in our hearts, unique and precious. I love you. Not because you're Elizabeth Montgomery, CEO, but because you're Elizabeth who learns quantum physics to help my daughter dream bigger, who sees value in a maintenance man's wisdom, who makes our world larger simply by being in it. You don't have to respond to this. Sometimes words need to be said simply because they're true. Mark, he hasn't given it to her yet. She's due back today, her flight landing in 3 hours, and he's still debating the wisdom of such naked honesty. But Amy, with her usual prescient wisdom, had seen him writing late last night and simply said, Dad, according to quantum theory, in some universe you've already told her. Why not make it this one? The morning passes in a blur of routine maintenance checks and meetings, the letter burning a hole in his pocket. Elizabeth's last text had been simple. Landing at 2. Meet me at our spot, their spot, the bus stop where it all began. The simplicity of the suggestion, the rightness of it, makes his heart race. At 1:45, he stands there in the weak winter sunshine. The bench has been replaced with a newer model, but the view is the same. City life rushing past, each person caught in their own story. A young woman hurries by, collar turned up against the wind, and for a moment he's transported back to that rainy night. Thinking deep thoughts, he turns, and there she is. Elizabeth looks tired from travel, her usual corporate polish softened around the edges. She's wearing casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, and carrying a familiar paperback. Jane Eyre? He asks, nodding at the book. I reread it on the flight. She sits on the bench, patting the space beside her. It's a story about two people who see each other's true selves, despite all the reasons the world gives them not to. Mark joins her, aware of every inch of space between them. Amy's theory about quantum entanglement was surprisingly accurate. Elizabeth's hand finds his, warm despite the chill air. I felt it too, how distance became irrelevant, how every message, every call, every shared moment with Amy only made this feeling stronger. I wrote you something, Mark says quietly, reaching for the letter. It's not elegant or poetic, just true. Elizabeth reads in silence, her fingers tracing his words written between Amy's equations. When she looks up, her eyes are bright with tears. Only you, she says softly, would write a love letter on quantum physics homework. Only you would make it perfect by doing so. I meant every word. I know. She turns to face him fully. That's who you are. Someone whose actions and Words align perfectly. It's one of the things I love about you. The word hangs between them, a bridge finally crossed. When did you know, he asks. In Japan, during a board meeting about market expansion. All I could think about was Amy's latest scientific theory, and whether you were wearing that jacket I had cleaned. That's when I realized success means nothing if you can't share it with the people you love. Mark thinks of Sarah, of her belief that love multiplies rather than divides, of how she'd want this for them, this gentle growing together, this careful tending of new joy. Amy says that according to quantum mechanics, loving someone changes. Both the lover and the beloved at a subatomic level, he says, smiling. That we're literally different people because we chose to care about each other. Smart girl, your daughter. Elizabeth's free hand comes up to touch his cheek. Our daughter, if you'll let me be part of her life that way. The kiss, when it comes, feels like coming home, like rain on a cold night, like kindness freely given, like quantum particles finding their perfect alignment. When they part, Elizabeth rests her forehead against his. I love you too, by the way. Not because you're Mark Henderson, facility manager, but because you're Mark, who shares his daughter's dinner with strangers, who sees the best in people, who makes the world warmer simply by being in it. Around them, the city continues its busy pace, but here, on this bench where their story began, time seems to pause, a perfect moment of connection, of choices made and love declared, of new chapters waiting to be written. The board meeting minutes lie open on the conference room table, their formal language failing to capture the tension in the room. Emergency session, called to address concerns regarding professional conduct and corporate image. Elizabeth sits. At the head of the table, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. Mark stands by the window, invited to attend but not to sit, a subtle power play that speaks volumes. Chairman Wallace clears his throat. Ms. Montgomery, the board's concerns have only intensified. Your relationship with Mr. Henderson poses significant risks to shareholder confidence. The optics, Elizabeth interrupts, her voice cool, of two competent professionals who happen to care for each other, or the optics of a board more concerned with appearances than actual performance metrics. She opens a folder, spreading documents across the table. Let's discuss optics. Under Mark's leadership, facility costs are down 30%. Employee satisfaction in maintenance and operations has increased by 45%. The emergency response system he implemented during the server crisis has been adopted as an industry standard. Nevertheless, another board member interjects, the public perception, has our stock dropped? Elizabeth asks. Have we lost contracts? Has any actual damage occurred beyond some tabloid speculation and your own discomfort with someone you consider beneath our social station? Mark steps forward. If I may. He waits for Elizabeth's nod before continuing. I understand your concerns. A maintenance man dating the CEO doesn't fit the corporate narrative. But I'm not here to defend our relationship. It needs no defense. I'm here to suggest that perhaps your narrative needs updating. He approaches the table, his manner confident but respectful. You're right that I didn't attend an Ivy League school. I learned about systems by fixing them, about leadership by earning trust one small interaction at a time. If that makes some people uncomfortable, perhaps they should examine why. Wallace's expression hardens. Mr. Henderson, while we appreciate your unique perspective, this is ultimately about what's best for Horizon Technologies. Is it? Elizabeth stands now, her voice carrying the authority that built an empire. Or is it about maintaining an outdated status quo? Michael and I built this company on innovation, on challenging assumptions about what's possible. Why should our corporate culture be any different? She moves to stand beside Mark, their shoulders touching. I've prepared 2 documents for your consideration. The first is a comprehensive analysis of how our management team's diverse backgrounds, including Mark's practical expertise, have improved company performance. The second is my resignation letter. A murmur runs through the board members. Wallace leans forward. Elizabeth, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm reasoning that any company afraid to evolve doesn't deserve to survive. I'm reasoning that judging someone's worth by their education rather than their contributions is not only morally wrong, but economically stupid. She places both documents on the table. You have a choice. Accept that your CEO and facilities manager are in love and judge us by our work, not our relationship status. Or accept my resignation and watch our stock price reflect how the market feels about losing the leadership that doubled company value in 5 years. Mark touches her arm gently. Elizabeth, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She smiles at him, then faces the board again. Michael used to say that real innovation happens when we stop letting fear drive our decisions. I'm not afraid anymore. Are you? The silence stretches. Board members exchange glances, shuffle papers, adjust ties. Finally, Wallace speaks, his tone resigned but respectful. The board will need to establish clear protocols regarding professional boundaries and reporting structures. Already prepared, Elizabeth replies, sliding another document forward. Mark will report directly to operations, not to me. All facilities. Decisions will be reviewed by an independent committee. We've thought this through. Of course you have. Wallace actually smiles slightly. Your brother would be proud, Elizabeth. He always said corporate culture needed a shake-up. Later, in Elizabeth's office, Mark reads through the meeting minutes while she handles follow-up calls. The formal language now includes terms like diversity of experience and practical expertise valuation, small changes that signal bigger shifts. You risked everything, he says quietly when she finishes her calls. No. Elizabeth joins him by the window. I risked a job to keep what matters most. There's a difference. Amy's going to say this proves her quantum theory about love changing the fundamental nature of reality. Well, Elizabeth laughs. She's not wrong. Sometimes love does change reality, one board meeting at a time. Outside, Chicago stretches beneath them, a city of possibilities where maintenance men can become executives and CEOs can choose love over convention. Mark thinks of Sarah again, imagining her pride in this moment, not just in him, but in the family they're building, in the boundaries they're breaking. The meeting minutes will record this as a simple policy decision, but they know it's more. It's a declaration that love doesn't follow corporate hierarchies, that worth isn't measured by degrees or titles, that sometimes the bravest choice is simply to stand together and let your truth change the world. The adoption papers rest on the kitchen table, their legal formalities softened by Amy's quantum physics calculations penciled in the margins. She's been working out the mathematical probability of families finding each other, complex equations that somehow make perfect sense in her 9-year-old mind. According to my calculations, Amy announces, pointing to a particularly detailed formula, the chances of a billionaire CEO giving her jacket to exactly the right maintenance man on exactly the right rainy night are approximately 1 in 10 million trillion. And yet here we are, Elizabeth says softly, her finger tracing the words on the document that will legally make her Amy's mother. Sometimes the heart has better math than quantum physics. Mark watches them from the doorway, holding Sarah's old photo album. They'd all agreed it should be present for this moment, this bridging of past and future, this expanding of what family means. Mom would like this, Amy says suddenly, looking up from her calculations. She told me once that love is like energy. It can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. Elizabeth blinks back tears. That's beautiful, Amy, and very scientifically. Accurate? I found something, Mark says, opening the album to a marked page. Sarah wrote this letter to Amy when she was sick. I think she'd want us to read it today. The letter is written in Sarah's elegant hand, the paper worn from multiple readings. My dearest Amy, if you're reading this, it means your father has found someone special, someone worthy of sharing our family's love. I want you to know that this makes me happy. Love isn't pie, sweetheart. Having more people to love doesn't mean each person gets a smaller slice. It means the pie gets bigger. To the person reading this with my daughter, thank you for choosing to love her. Thank you for seeing the stardust in her eyes and the universe in her mind. She has so much love to give and such wonderful questions to ask. Please help her find the answers. Remember, Amy, that families are like your beloved quantum particles. They can exist in multiple states at once. You can miss me and love someone new. You can hold past and future in your heart simultaneously. That's not confusion, that's just love being love. With eternal love, Mom. Amy reaches for Elizabeth's hand. Is that why you're crying? Because Mom gave us permission to be happy? Elizabeth pulls her close. I'm crying because your mother was wise enough to think of this moment, to make it easier for all of us. Because she knew love grows even when she couldn't be here to see it. Mark sets the album aside and joins them at the table, taking out his pen. Ready? The signing itself is simple. Names and dates on dotted lines, but they've made it their own ceremony. Amy insists on using her special quantum physics pen for calculating new beginnings. Elizabeth wears the compass necklace that matches Amy's. Mark brings out Sarah's favorite tea set for the occasion. There's one more thing, Elizabeth says, after the papers are signed. She pulls out a small box. Amy, this was my mother's charm bracelet. Michael and I added charms for all our family's big moments. I thought maybe we could start adding our own. The silver bracelet holds several charms: a microscope for your love of science, a book for your mother's passion for literature, a wrench for your father's gift of fixing things, and a compass for finding our way to each other. Can we add a quantum particle? Amy asks, examining each charm carefully, to represent how we're all connected now? Of course. Elizabeth fastens the bracelet around Amy's wrist. We can add whatever symbols tell our family's story. Mark pulls out one last item, a framed photo of Sarah. I thought we could take a family picture, past and present together. They arrange themselves around Sarah's photo. Amy in the middle, Mark and Elizabeth on either side, the adoption papers visible on the table before them. As the camera's timer blinks, Amy speaks. Did you know that quantum physics says the act of observing something changes it? So by taking this picture, we're actually creating something new. What are we creating, sweetheart? Mark asks. A superposition, Amy declares with scientific certainty. A family that's both old and new at the same time. Mom's still my mom, and now Elizabeth is too. Is that okay? Elizabeth hugs her close. That's quantum physics at its finest, my brilliant girl. The camera flashes, capturing the moment. Tears and smiles, past and present, endings and beginnings, all superimposed like Amy's beloved quantum states. On the table, the adoption papers make it legal, but they all know the real bonds were formed. Long ago, on a rainy night, when kindness opened an unexpected door. Now, Amy says, reaching for her calculations, can I explain my theory about how love affects gravitational waves? I think our family just proved my hypothesis. The wedding ring catches the morning light, its unique design telling a story of past and present merged. Sarah's original gold band has been carefully melted and combined with new gold, crafted into two intertwined circles that symbolize the continuous nature of love. Inside, an inscription reads, "Love transforms, never diminishes." Mark holds it carefully as he gets ready in their apartment, Amy perched on his bed in her flower girl dress, offering commentary on his tie-tying technique. The probability of getting it perfect on the first try is statistically low, she informs him, consulting a small notebook where she's apparently been tracking his attempts. But that's okay because Elizabeth, says imperfect knots have more character. Speaking of Elizabeth, Mark says, finally achieving a reasonable knot. How is she doing? Amy's face lights up with the joy of having insider information. She's in the study with Mrs. Rodriguez. She's wearing Mom's pearl earrings, the ones in all the old pictures. She said it felt right, like Mom was lending them to her sister. She pauses, considering, is it okay that she's wearing them? Marky kneels before his daughter, heart full. What do you think? I think Mom would like it, like how we're using her ring too. It's like quantum entanglement, but with memories instead of particles. The ceremony space is exactly as they'd planned. The rooftop garden of their apartment building transformed into an intimate sanctuary. Only their closest friends are present. Mrs. Rodriguez, Jenny from the diner, Mr. Garcia and his wife, Elizabeth's most trusted colleagues. No press, no corporate politics, just the people who've been part of their journey. They've set up a small table with photographs, Sarah smiling with baby Amy, Michael in his favorite Star Wars shirt, Elizabeth's parents, Mark's family. Not a memorial, but an acknowledgement that love builds upon love, that joy can emerge from loss. Elizabeth appears in a simple cream dress, Sarah's pearls at her ears, carrying a bouquet of Sarah's favorite flowers, mixed with Michael's beloved blue. Delphiniums. Mark's breath catches, not just at her beauty, but at the thoughtful way she's woven their histories together. Amy leads the procession, scattering flower petals while simultaneously explaining to guests how the scatter pattern relates to quantum distribution theories. Mrs. Rodriguez dabs at her eyes, murmuring, Dios mío, she is her mother's daughter. Both of them. The ceremony itself is brief but meaningful. They've written their own vows, speaking of second chances and expanded hearts, of quantum physics and maintenance wisdom, of rain-soaked nights and morning coffees. I promise, Elizabeth says, her voice clear and sure, to honor the path that led us here, to love Amy as my own while celebrating Sarah's presence in her life, to fix what's broken and cherish what's whole. I promise, Mark responds, to see you always as I saw you that first night, not as a CEO or a billionaire, but as a soul connecting with mine, to build our future while treasuring our past, to remind you that sometimes the simplest actions have the most profound consequences. Amy holds out the ring. Having insisted on being ring-bearer as well as flower girl, it's more efficient, and Mum always said efficiency matters. As Mark slides it onto Elizabeth's finger, the intertwined bands catch the light, old gold and new shining as one. Their first kiss as husband and wife is accompanied by Amy's delighted applause and Mrs. Rodriguez's happy sobs. The small gathering moves to tables set with simple elegance. Elizabeth had insisted on using the same caterer who'd supplied food to Preston Tower's maintenance staff all those years ago. During the reception, Amy presents them with a gift, a framed illustration of her latest scientific theory. It proves that love follows quantum principles, she explains earnestly. See, when two hearts connect, they create a new reality that affects all possible universes. Elizabeth hugs her tight. That's the most beautiful scientific proof I've ever seen. As evening falls, fairy lights twinkle above the rooftop garden. Their first dance is to Moon River, Sarah's favorite song. Mark holds Elizabeth close, both of them watching Amy demonstrate wave-particle duality using her flower girl basket. Sarah would love this, Mark whispers. All of it. The way you've helped make it feel like she's here with us. She is here, Elizabeth replies softly. In Amy's smile, in your kindness, in the way we've learned that love only multiplies. She touches the pearl earrings gently. I asked Amy if it was okay to wear these. She said Sarah would want her new sister to have them. Mark's heart swells at his daughter's wisdom. Out of the mouths of quantum physicists, they sway together under the stars, surrounded by the family they've built. Not replacing what was lost, but growing something new from fertile soil. The ring on Elizabeth's finger catches the light of the evening's first star, old gold and new, shining together, proving Amy's theory that love can exist in multiple states at once. Memory and present, grief and joy, ending and beginning, all part of the same beautiful equation. The family portrait hangs in the living room of their apartment. taken exactly 1 year after the wedding. It's a study in what Amy calls quantum family dynamics. Elizabeth and Mark stand together, Amy between them, and on the wall behind them, given places of honor, are photos of Sarah and Michael. The image captures perfectly how they've built something new while cherishing what came before. "Mom, Dad, come quick!" Amy's voice carries from her room, now a combination bedroom and junior science lab. "I think I've figured out how to explain our family using string theory." They find her surrounded by textbooks and diagrams, her advanced physics homework forgotten in favor of her personal research. At 10, she's already taking high school classes, thriving under the combined influence of Elizabeth's analytical mind and Mark's practical wisdom. "See," she explains, pointing to a complex diagram, "if we consider love as a multi-dimensional force operating across various planes of existence, in English, sweetheart," Mark suggests, sharing an amused look with Elizabeth, "our family proves that love isn't limited by normal space-time constraints," Amy declares triumphantly, which is why the Henderson-Montgomery Foundation's work is so important. The foundation, their shared vision come to life. It started small, inspired by their own story, a program to help single parents advance their careers while maintaining dignity and family stability. Now, 1 year later, it's transformed hundreds of lives. Elizabeth sits on Amy's bed, picking up one of the thank you letters they've received. "Thanks to the Foundation's education program, I can finally take engineering classes while knowing my kids are cared for. You've helped me show my children that it's never too late to dream bigger." Mark thinks back to his days of counting coins for Amy's school lunch, of the pride he had to swallow to accept help. The Foundation works differently, offering opportunities, not handouts. Job training, education grants, childcare support, and most importantly, mentorship from people who understand the journey. "Did you know," Amy continues, pulling out her ever-present research notebook, "that we've helped 57 single parents get advanced degrees this year? And 93 children have joined our STEM program. I've been graphing the results. Look, the success rate follows a quantum probability curve." Elizabeth laughs, drawing Amy close. "Only you would find quantum mechanics in charitable giving." "Well, Mom always said that science explains everything," Amy replies, then clarifies, "I mean Sarah, Mom." Though Elizabeth Mom says the same thing, which according to my research is statistically significant. The easy way Amy navigates her expanded definition of family still touches them deeply. She's created her own terminology, her own way of holding both mothers in her heart. Sarah is Sarah Mom, or sometimes Star Mom, because she watches from the stars, while Elizabeth is Elizabeth Mom, or Earth Mom, because she's here to help navigate the world. Mark picks up one of Amy's diagrams. Complex mathematical proof that love grows exponentially, not linearly. "Should we show them your theory at the Foundation's board meeting tomorrow?" "Actually," Elizabeth adds, "we have something to tell you about the meeting." She sits down, taking Amy's hand. "The board has approved your proposal for the Young Scientists program. Starting next month, all the children in our programs will have access to advanced STEM education." Amy's eyes widen. "Really? My idea about helping other kids learn quantum physics while their parents study?" "Really," Mark confirms. "And they want you to help design the curriculum. Apparently, someone showed them your probability graphs for the pilot program." Elizabeth tries to hide her proud smile. She'd known the board wouldn't be able to resist Amy's detailed analysis, complete with multi-dimensional models showing how children's academic success correlates with their parents' opportunities. "Can we call Mrs. Rodriguez and tell her?" Amy bounces with excitement. She said her granddaughter wants to be a scientist too. As Amy races off to make the call, Mark pulls Elizabeth close. "Did you ever imagine that night at the bus stop that sharing a jacket would lead to all this?" Elizabeth touches her wedding ring, the intertwined bands of old and new gold. Sarah's letter in the photo album. She wrote that love isn't pie, that it grows to feed everyone at the table. I think we've proved her right. Through the window, the first evening star appears, one of Sarah's windows in heaven. Amy returns, phone in hand, already explaining to Mrs. Rodriguez how the new program proves her theories about educational quantum entanglement. The family portrait catches the last rays of sunlight, the faces in the photographs, both living and remembered, seeming to smile with shared joy. They've built something beautiful here, a family that defies conventional definitions, a foundation that changes lives, a love that transforms without diminishing what came before. "Hey," Amy calls, covering the phone speaker. "Mrs. Rodriguez wants to know if you'll make empanadas for the Foundation's next family dinner. She says your recipe is almost as good as hers now." Mark and Elizabeth exchange glances, remembering shared meals and simple kindnesses that built bridges between worlds. "Tell her yes," Elizabeth says, "and remind her that quantum physics proves cooking is just another form of chemistry." Amy grins, returning to her call. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" Elizabeth mom says yes. "And also let me explain how Heisenberg's uncertainty principle applies to your secret recipe." In the growing dusk, their laughter mingles with the city sounds below, a symphony of family and possibility, of love that expands to encompass past and present, of simple kindnesses that change the world one heart at a time. Just as Amy's beloved quantum physics suggests, they exist in a perfect superposition, grieving and joyful, remembering and creating, ending and beginning all at once. And somewhere in every universe, it's raining at a bus stop, and someone is offering their jacket to a stranger, proving that love's greatest equations are written in the mathematics of the heart.